When news of Diane Keaton's passing spread through Hollywood on that quiet October morning in 2025, the world seemed to lose its color. She had been the heartbeat of an era, the woman who made romance both intelligent and human, who made laughter look like art. At 79, she left the world as she had lived in it, softly, gracefully, and without spectacle. The grief was immediate. Old colleagues like Woody Allen, Al Pacino, and Warren Beatty sent their tributes, speaking of her wit and her fearless devotion to life. But it was the silence of Keanu Reeves that struck the deepest chord. For a man who had built his life on restraint, a man who smiled instead of speaking and mourned privately instead of publicly, his stillness became a mystery all its own. And then, 1 week later, during the New York premiere of a small independent film, he appeared. The cameras expected his usual quiet charm, but what they captured instead was something raw and unguarded. Dressed in black, eyes heavy with sorrow, Keanu approached the microphones with a trembling voice and whispered, "I loved Diane, deeply, sincerely, painfully." The world fell silent. Those words, simple but devastating, felt like the confession of a man who had been carrying a truth too fragile to speak for 2 decades. Reporters froze. The crowd of journalists, so used to the superficial rhythm of red carpets, suddenly realized they were witnessing something sacred. Keanu's voice wavered, breaking once or twice, but he didn't stop. He spoke of Diane not as a co-star, not as a legend, but as someone who had seen him when the rest of the world only saw his mask. She was alive in every moment, he said softly. When she laughed, she lit up the whole set. And when she looked at you, you felt like the world wasn't so heavy anymore. Behind the cameras, some of the crew were in tears. There was something disarming about seeing Keanu Reeves, the man who had endured more loss than most could survive, finally allow himself to break. Their story had always been whispered in Hollywood circles, half believed and half dismissed as just another rumor from the tabloids. But that night, his confession gave it shape, gave it truth. It wasn't gossip anymore, it was the kind of love story that lives in silence, burning quietly until one soul leaves the world and the other can finally speak. As the premiere ended, Keanu didn't pose for photographs. He simply placed a white rose beside a portrait of Diane displayed in the lobby, the same kind of rose she had once tucked behind her ear on the set of Something's Got to Give. When asked what he would remember most about her, he answered without hesitation, "Her laugh. And the way she believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." That night, fans lit candles outside Grauman's Chinese Theater, leaving handwritten notes and movie tickets from Annie Hall and The Godfather. Across the city, her voice played softly from old film clips, gentle, funny, endlessly alive. And somewhere in that crowd of mourning, Keanu Reeves stood quietly, head bowed, hands in his pockets, not as a star, not as Neo, but as a man finally mourning the woman who had taught him how to feel again, and whose absence would now echo in every beat of his heart. For Keanu, this wasn't just the end of a chapter. It was the end of an unspoken promise, a love that never bloomed, yet somehow never died. Their story began not in a romantic dinner or a secret rendezvous, but under the blinding lights of a Hollywood set. It was autumn 2002. And the production of Something's Got to Give was in full swing in Los Angeles. Diane Keaton, then 56, walked onto the set with her trademark wit, oversized glasses, and fearless confidence. Across from her stood Keanu Reeves, 38, quiet, contemplative, and almost shy in her presence. The film was a romantic comedy, a genre that Diane had defined for decades. But this time, life decided to blur the line between script and reality. Their first scene together, a simple doctor-patient exchange, was electric. Crew members later recalled how the air seemed to shift when their eyes met. Though the script called for charm and humor, what emerged was something deeper, something real. Diane joked between takes that kissing Keanu felt like kissing my own son, drawing laughter from the crew. Yet the way her voice softened whenever he looked at her betrayed a tenderness that words could not hide. And Keanu, who was used to stoic action roles, found himself stumbling through dialogue, genuinely flustered by her presence. The chemistry between them wasn't crafted, it was spontaneous, undeniable, alive. When Something's Got to Give premiered in 2003, it became a box office phenomenon. grossing over $266 million worldwide. But behind the scenes, whispers began to circulate. Had the on-screen spark between Keaton and Reeves followed them off-screen? In 2006, Diane appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show and, with her signature grin, declared, "I'm going to marry Keanu Reeves. He likes older women." The audience laughed, thinking it was one of her playful jokes. But to those who knew her, the glint in her eyes hinted at something more than humor, perhaps a longing she could not openly name. Their connection deepened after filming ended. Friends recalled late-night drives along the Pacific Coast Highway, Diane in the passenger seat humming old Beatles tunes while Keanu smiled quietly beside her. She would talk for hours about art, architecture, aging, and love while he listened, finding in her a warmth that no Hollywood script could replicate. Diane, who had loved and lost some of the industry's most famous men, found in Keanu a gentleness unlike any she had known. She spoke to him about Woody Allen, who had adored her but feared commitment, Warren Beatty, who loved everyone yet belonged to no one, and Al Pacino. Her greatest heartbreak, the man who refused her plea to marry him in 1987, leaving her heart shattered into pieces. Keanu, in his quiet way, became her peace. She once told a friend, "When I'm with him, I feel young again, not because he's younger, but because he listens like the world hasn't broken him yet." But Keanu was broken, more deeply than she knew. The ghosts of his past were still alive within him. In 1999, his daughter Ava Archer Syme Reeves was stillborn. 2 years later, her mother, Jennifer Syme, died in a car accident. Two losses so close together left scars that no time could heal. He carried that grief like a shadow, following him everywhere. One evening, as Diane sang softly in the car, Keanu finally spoke the words he had been holding back. "I want to love you, but I don't know how to stop being afraid." Diane reached for his hand. Her voice trembled. "Then don't leave me, just stay, even if it's hard. I've been broken too. But fear has a way of defeating even the purest love." By early 2005, their relationship had begun to fade under the weight of unspoken pain. One morning, they sat together at a small cafe in Venice Beach. The coffee between them had gone cold. The silence said everything words couldn't. Keanu looked at her, the woman who had taught him that love could be patient, could be healing, and whispered, "You deserve someone stronger." Diane smiled, though her eyes were wet. "Maybe I already had him. He just doesn't know it yet." They parted that day, not with anger, but with a quiet heartbreak, the kind that doesn't end, only softens with time. And for years afterward, whenever Keanu looked out at the California coastline, he remembered that car, that laugh, that fleeting moment when two souls met, and love, for once, had felt possible. Time moved on, as it always does, but for Keanu Reeves, something inside him never quite healed after Diane. The world saw him smiling on red carpets, performing breathtaking stunts in John Wick and the Matrix sequels, appearing in interviews with his calm humility, but those who knew him closely said there was always a shadow in his eyes. It wasn't the exhaustion of fame, it was the look of a man still haunted by a goodbye that had come too soon. Though their romantic chapter ended in 2005, Diane Keaton never really left his life. They exchanged Christmas messages, brief phone calls, and the occasional dinner whenever their paths crossed in Los Angeles. At award shows, they would share short, knowing glances, the kind that belonged not to lovers, but to two souls bound by something deeper, recognition. At the 2020 Academy Awards, the world caught a glimpse of that connection, as Diane stepped onto the red carpet in her signature wide-brimmed hat. Keanu approached her with that shy, boyish smile. The cameras flashed as they embraced. The moment lasted only seconds. But in that stillness, something timeless flickered, a quiet warmth, a spark of what might have been. Reporters called it a friendly reunion. But for Keanu, it was far more. It was closure disguised as coincidence. When October 11, 2025 came, and the news of Diane's death hit global headlines, Keanu was filming in New York. His assistant brought him the news on set. Those nearby later said he didn't speak for almost an hour. He simply walked off the stage, sat alone near a window, and stared outside as rain began to fall. When he finally whispered, it was barely audible. "No, not her." The days that followed were a blur. He didn't attend public memorials. He didn't release a statement. But friends say he spent hours going through old letters and photographs, snapshots from Something's Got to Give. Candid pictures of them laughing between takes. A note Diane had once written him that read, "Thank you for reminding me love can be quiet." On October 18, 2025, 1 week after her passing, Keanu appeared at a film premiere in New York. The press expected him to talk about his movie. But as he stepped to the microphone, he looked directly at the cameras and said something no one expected. "Diane, I'm sorry I left you alone. I will carry this pain forever." The room went silent. There was no applause, no follow-up question. It was as if the entire city paused to let his grief breathe. Those words, so raw, so unfiltered, were not meant for the audience. They were meant for her. In that moment, Keanu's public mask fell away. The composed movie star became a man again. The same man who once drove down the Pacific Coast Highway with Diane's laughter filling the night air. The same man who had promised himself he'd never love again after so much loss. He later told a friend that he dreamt of her that night. In the dream, Diane was wearing white, sitting by a window with a cup of coffee, sunlight spilling over her face. She looked peaceful. She smiled and said, "It's okay, Keanu, I'm still singing the Beatles." That image stayed with him, her voice, her humor, her grace, and though she was gone, Keanu felt that their connection had transcended everything. "We weren't meant to end with marriage or forever," he once said quietly. "We were meant to remind each other that love, even when it hurts, is proof that we lived." In the months after Diane's passing, Keanu was seen visiting the ocean often, the same coastline they had once driven along. He never brought flowers, only small seashells he'd leave on the sand, whispering words that the wind would carry away. Fans who happened to see him from a distance described it as the saddest kind of devotion, one without witnesses, one that never asks to be seen. Hollywood has known countless romances, but few as silent, as tender, and as achingly human as this one. Keanu Reeves and Diane Keaton never walked down the aisle, never grew old together, never said, "I love you," under the bright lights of fame. Yet their story outlived every headline. It became a quiet legend, a love unfulfilled, but eternal. And somewhere, beyond the noise of the world, perhaps Diane still smiles at him. The woman who taught him that love doesn't need to last forever to be real. And that even a broken heart can still be beautiful.